Well, we are watching the live radar lower right. More than 100 million could be impacted by this storm system that we're keeping our eyes on. But first, I want to bring you some big news on Iran's nuclear weapons program and a deal announced this weekend that the administration called an historic agreement and Israel called an historic mistake. The concern from the Israelis is the same thing we are hearing from some Republicans and a number of Democrats, actually. They are all worried that this deal allows Iran to continue pursuing nuclear weapons. Today, the president hit back at those critics.
Huge challenges remain, but we cannot close the door on diplomacy, and we cannot rule out peaceful solutions to the world's problems. We cannot commit ourselves to an endless cycle of conflict. And tough talk and bluster may be the easy thing to do politically, but it's not the right thing for our security. It is not the right thing for our security.
John Bolton is a former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations and a Fox News contributor. Ambassador, good to see you. And so the president basically dismissing the critics as full of bluster. Your thoughts?
Well, negotiations have been underway with Iran over its nuclear weapons program for 10 years. And for 10 years, Iran has used the negotiations to buy time, to gain legitimacy, and to continue its work on its program. And that's essentially what it got out of the negotiations in Geneva this past weekend. And it got something it very much wanted, which was relief from the economic sanctions that have been in place. Limited relief, to be sure, but what Iran saw was the psychological opportunity to break the unity of the West, to move the sanctions on a downward trend. And I think it sees the road ahead now for it to get to nuclear weapons at a time of its choosing.
I know that you feel this is not a good deal. This is, in your words, quote, abject surrender. Is it quite that bad? What makes it surrender?
There is one absolutely critical point in this agreement. You can argue about all 4 pages of it. It's a very flawed document. But one critical point is that it allows Iran to keep enriching uranium, and it contemplates an end state that Iran will have a uranium enrichment program. The capability to enrich uranium is the long pole in the tent when it comes to any nuclear weapons program. And this is a regime that for 25 years has lied about the fundamental purpose of this program. It's concealed information. It cannot be trusted with uranium enrichment, and yet it continues to do so, and it continues to have the capability to break out to nuclear weapons essentially at a time of its choosing. That is a huge victory. It leaves this agreement in a weaker position than multiple resolutions of the UN Security Council. So feature that. The Obama administration position is weaker than the position Russia and China espoused 7 years ago.
You know, it's being billed by the administration as historic. You know, we struck this deal. It's the first kind of deal in so long. And the question many people have is, well, how do we get there? You know, if I go into the used car lot and he wants me to pay 10 grand for the used car and I want to pay 1 grand, and for years we stand there going 10 grand, 1 grand, 10, 1, 10, 1. And then after 10 years I finally say 9.9, we may have a deal, but I didn't get it. You know, it's not the deal I wanted. I mean, he can give me this deal. The point I'm trying to get to is, did we get the deal because we basically gave Iran everything they wanted?
Well, we certainly gave them a lot, but there's a more fundamental problem with the whole approach to negotiation and the idea that economic sanctions brought Iran to the table. You can have a negotiation when there's a bridgeable difference between 2 parties that have something in common. Here, Obama, to give him the most benign interpretation, came to the table to try to do something to stop the Iranian nuclear weapons program. Iran came to the table to protect the nuclear weapons program and to get relief from sanctions, and it pretty much achieved its objectives. You cannot negotiate with a party on the other side that has no intention of giving up a program like the weapons program that was the very reason Obama wanted to negotiate. That's why, ultimately, any deal benefits Iran, and that's what's happened here.
Do you think there's a misunderstanding about that in this administration? Or, I mean, because they say, look, it's a start.
Well, a start to what? You know, if you have an end state in mind that means Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons, that means that Iran has to reverse a 25-year-long policy. Of course, Iran says it doesn't want nuclear weapons. That's part of its program of deception. I think what's really underlying the administration here is that although they've said repeatedly they don't want Iran to get nuclear weapons, Obama fundamentally believes you can contain and deter nuclear Iran as we did the Soviet Union during the Cold War. I think that's delusional because I think the calculus of the Ayatollahs is very different than the calculus of the Soviets. But it's worse in the case of the Middle East. Even if I'm completely wrong and that you could contain and deter a nuclear Iran, it doesn't stop with Iran. Even Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said that if Iran gets nuclear weapons, Egypt will, Saudi Arabia will, and Turkey will.
And just in case people are wondering what Iran's motivations are, just on the same weekend they strike this deal, the Ayatollah is talking about annihilating Israel. So it's they haven't exactly had a change of heart. Ambassador Bolton, good to see you.
Thank you.